to a new episode of Business Meets Life. And today I'm taking you to Australia, Sydney. We're meeting Chris Collingwood. A couple of months ago, one of my trusted trainers and coaches, Adrian, he took me to one of Chris's classes and he was like, Janine, you must meet Chris. You must take his training. Why? Because it's going to be life-changing. So, Chris, how are you doing today?
Janine, very good, and it's great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, let me be German and go straight to the point. Now, tell me the biggest success you've had in one of your clients, and I think this goes towards financial freedom. Tell me a little bit about it.
One of my former students, he trained extensively with us. He's done our graduate certificate program, and he decided he one day he said to himself, "With this material I've learnt with Chris and Jules, if it's any good, I should be able to become financially independent." So he then used the tools that he had to basically set a frame with his unconscious mind. Hey, my unconscious, can you make me financially independent? Can you give me a business idea? And he got a resounding yes response. And so he then just left that with his unconscious mind. 3 days later, he's sitting in the cafe with his brother and his girlfriend and his brother's girlfriend. And this idea popped into his head, fully formed an idea for a business. Anyway, he started the business and he applied what he learned with us in terms of how he set up the business, how he selected the people, how he designed the different roles, and how he did the interviews for people, the whole shebang. Anyway, 18 months later, he was sitting on a beach in Bali with his girlfriend, and he just happened to look at his bank account. A nice big fat payment had gone in. So he set things up. So once he had hit a threshold, he had to get a dividend every month. And he realized that if he kept having that every month, that meant he was financially independent. And sure, that's what happened. So he's financially independent in 18 months. Now, what I
Wow.
really yeah, I thought wow as well. And he did it to test he said, if this material I learned with Chris and Jules is any good, I should be able to become financially independent. So he achieved that. But it gets better. So he then thought, you know what? I'm going to replicate that business in a different location. So all the work he had done in terms of branding and this, that, and the other, he was able to transfer that, the templates he had for hiring staff, etc. And he set up a second, he replicated the business in a second location. Within 6 months, that second location was making more money. He was making more money from the replicated business than from the original. And so he's really hit his target for financial independence twice. 18 months the first time, then 6 months later,
Oh
he
my
does it again.
gosh.
And then one day he designed his businesses so that they could almost run themselves. He'd come in, just minimal oversight, just make sure everything's, running on track. He, put managers in, etc. So he's in the first business one morning, and somebody walked in off the street and offered him $500,000 for the first business. So he sold that because he's still financially independent from the second business. And of course, he's used that $500,000. That's a pot that he uses for other startups and projects.
So some people who are listening now, they might actually say, well, but Chris is not a financial advisor. Like, how did he do it? What was his part to make him financially independent now? Maybe you can summarize that again, because it seems like a little bit untangible.
Okay, so the first thing is he part of what we teach is how to develop a relationship between your conscious mind and your unconscious mind. In fact, we have two types of minds. In fact, all mammals have both a conscious mind and an unconscious mind. And so it's something that has evolutionary adaptive benefits. So we evolved to have these two types of minds. Now we live in a society where there's a bias towards the conscious mind, and there's a lack of understanding of how to work with the unconscious. So part of what he learned is how to work with his unconscious mind, how to balance each mind, how to use his conscious mind for what the conscious mind does well, and of course, how to use the unconscious mind for what the unconscious mind has evolved to do. And so that was one of the things. A second thing, we do a lot of work on interpersonal communication. So how to actually establish rapport with people, understand people, be able to be aware of incredible information that people give you in terms of the language that they use, but also their nonverbal communication. So he became highly skilled in terms of people. Now, every business relies on people skills. I'm thinking of the great management consultant who wrote many books, Tom Peters. He says, soft is hard and hard is soft. So what he's referring to is soft skills. So typically in most businesses, they focus on the financials, and that's important. There's no doubts about it. And they put less emphasis on the soft skills, the emotional intelligence of people, the interpersonal communication, the leadership skills, and the culture of organizations. But he says soft is hard. That's the stuff that makes a difference in terms of the financial success, is how you build a team in any organization, a great team, how you build a culture to have people working together well and have people communicating really well. So that's one of the key things that he learned
Yes.
training with my partner and
I was meeting the French Chamber of Commerce in the south of China. And they really said that all the former soft skill trainings they offered about teams, leadership, communication, presentation skills, they weren't going anymore. Barely anybody would sign up. They all went back to the hard skills. So people still have this understanding it's all about the hard skills, right? And I remember when I came to your training, I also had that click suddenly. And suddenly something was unblocked. And I remember one of the ground like the foundation actually happened when I joined this 2-day training. I was with you, and like with the AI and podcasts, and it suddenly clicked. And I also felt like something was unblocked. So what other successes have you helped your clients achieve with your, I mean, it sounds like magic what you're doing.
well, it's many things. Look, I'll just talk about one of my own successes, first of all, if you don't mind. Myself and a management consultant friend, he invited me in. We went on a project where we took the call center of a major international charity. We worked in their head office in Australia, and we turned them from a loss center into a profit center. Now, what I love about that job is I love the work they do. That they make a tremendous difference in the world in terms of people's lives. They're just a wonderful organization, and so rather than operating at a loss in terms of their call center, we got rid of all their scripts. So it was all scripted to begin with. I spent time with the top performing people on the phones, found out what were the communication patterns that these people were using to get new donations, and often quite large donations. So there was one person there who was a top performer, captured what he could do. We designed a training program, and we then designed a coaching program for leadership, for managers and team leaders, to then coach their staff, the people in the call center, in the patterns that we had uncovered. So we built a model for them, and then we transferred the skills. Now within 18 months of finishing with them, they were not only a profit center, but they had a 1,280 something percent return on investment. So they had a massive improvement in their profitability, and they're doing important work. So for me, that's what I loved about that. We're helping an organization that is doing such good in the world. So often our emotions are communications from the unconscious. A very interesting case example. Somebody came to see me. She had a gambling addiction. She used to play the poker machines, what they called in Australia one-armed bandits. So they should go to the pub or the club, and she just put some money in, pulls a lever, this type of thing. And she wanted that addressed. Well, that was just the symptom. What was actually going on underneath that? She had an anxiety problem. And so what she discovered, that when she was gambling, it gave her relief temporarily from the anxious feelings. Now, what was really going on, she had anxiety, she had sensations of anxiety about future events, but rather than preparing herself for the future, So this is likely to happen. Let's get prepared for it so that we can manage that future event. Instead, she went, oh, I don't like this feeling. And she would go off and gamble. So over time, the anxiety got stronger and stronger and stronger. And then as her response to that, she did more and more gambling. So by addressing the
Wow.
anxiety, it only took one session, but we addressed the anxiety, taught her how to work with it so she could have just a little bit just to draw her attention and say, okay, how am I going to prepare for that event? She'll organize and prepare herself. And
I
that was
mean,
it. No,
there's tons of people who have gambling issues. And you mentioned basically just one session more or less was enough, and she was able to solve this, right?
yeah, because
Uh,
the gambling was just a symptom, but what was underneath it was an anxiety,
mm.
an anxiety signal that she wasn't working with and responding to and dealing with.
If we look at statistics, I think they say that 95% of people have anxiety daily, even. But most people,
Yeah.
especially me living in China and in Asia, most people don't even talk about it. I know that you have even prepared a course specifically just to tackle anxiety. Can you quickly tell us about the course? How long does it take? What's your percentage of success?
Okay, so the course takes about 8 hours, and now I've called the course Managing Anxiety, but it's more than that. So the first half of the course are strategies for how do you manage an anxious state? So how to manage it. And then the second part of the course is how do you address it and change it? So all emotional states have a structure. And if you understand how a state is structured, then if you know what you're doing, you can reorganize and transform the state. So all states can be transformed. Now, statistically, you mentioned, many people have daily anxiety. Well, the number one reason mental health reason a person sees a general medical practitioner in Australia is for anxiety. By the
I
way,
didn't know.
yep, that's the number one reason in terms of mental health. The number two reason is depression.
Wow.
And keep in mind, anxiety and depression, like any other emotional state, has a structure. And if you know the structure, you can learn to, first and foremost, manage the state. And secondly, you can change the state. So the course is designed for some management skills. So if you're having to feel anxious, this is how to manage it. And then when you're ready, the second half of the program was when you're ready, this is how you transform and change the state. I mentioned one little tip about anxiety or about emotions in general.
Yes, please.
Emotions have a time frame. So you don't feel anxious about the past. You feel anxious about the perceived, keyword perceived future. You don't feel guilty about the future. You feel guilty about the past.
Ah.
So there's always a time component in our emotions. By the way, where's your attention in time when you feel happy?
You're mindful, you're in the present.
You're in the present. Absolutely, that's right. You're in the present. And so determination is a future oriented. I'm determined because I'm representing something I want to achieve in the future, and I have made a congruent decision. I'm going to have that. I'm going to have that future. I'm determined to achieve it. So that would have that has a future time frame. And so that's one of the components of our emotional states. And there are a number of others, a number of other components. And so we apply, well, more than one model, but we apply a number of models on the program, and people learn. This is what happens. How do you experience anxiety? Okay, this is how to manage it. This is how to reduce it.
Yes.
Right.
Would you have like
And
one tip for us, something that we could already start just to take the first
good.
action towards handling our anxiety? I mean, I know it's a bit of a bigger topic, but we all seem to have it apparently.
Okay, so the first thing is, well, for any emotion that's unpleasant, move.
Like
So
I
get
stand
up,
up and just like walk over there. That's what you mean with move.
that's right, or go for a brisk walk, or do something physical, maybe go for a swim, go for a run, play around the golf. That will change how you're using your body, and that will change your state. Now, when anybody feels anxious, there'll be a particular way, a posture, a breathing pattern that they're using. So that's one tip, is move.
Sounds
Two,
easy. Everyone can do that.
that just manages. That doesn't change the state. It doesn't transform the state. It just manages your state temporarily.
Okay.
But um, by the way, depression, I just mentioned this. There's been a meta study. So the psychologists, they looked at a whole stack of different studies on physical movement, aerobic activity, and depression. And what they discovered is that 30 minutes of aerobic activity 3 times a week is just as effective as modern antidepressants.
Oh my gosh, I have so many people who I know have depression. I'll definitely tell this to
Yeah,
them.
and I can give you the link. I can give you a reference to the actual journal article on this. And so in terms of emotional regulation, physical activity, aerobic activity, 3, 4 times a week, half an hour, that has an overall positive effect on all your states, including anxiety and depression. Now, the other thing is, anxiety is defined as an apprehension about the future.
Yes.
So people are thinking about the future. So if you're ever feeling anxious, be aware of how you are thinking of the future. Now, a couple of different ways you do it, but one way that people do it is they visualize. They
Mhm.
imagine an event. Now, so another tip is then, when you do think about a future event that you feel anxious about, then consider, what can I do and what will I do to prepare myself adequately for that future event, so that if you then put your attention to preparation, that is developing whatever you need, whatever resources they might be, particular skills, or getting a particular piece of work done, whatever it might be. If you're focusing on getting prepared for the future, that will drop the intensity down.
I appreciate it. I think we all have a couple of tools already that we can start applying now for our success. Now, let's quickly move a little bit over to your private life because, I mean,
Yes.
I've had the pleasure to be in your house. You and your wife and the 3 wonderful cats welcomed me and the other training participants. You have a very successful business, outstanding courses. By the way, who are your teachers? Who have you learned from?
Okay. So when I learned NLP, look, I've been studying NLP since 1979. For the first 2 or 3 years, I self-trained because there was nobody teaching NLP in Australia at that time. Um, and then I was very fortunate in 1984 to meet Dr. John Grinder, one of the co-originators of NLP, he a former professor of linguistics. So I then decided to retrain with John, and frankly, John, I think John is just a wonderful trainer, amazing person, and along the way, I also trained with a lot of the early developers of NLP, people who've made contributions to NLP. I did a little bit of training with Richard Bandler, not much. I did some training with a woman called Leslie Cameron Bandler, who, fortunately, I'm sure it's something she wanted to do. Unfortunately for the world, she retired in the 80s, which is a great shame because I think she made some significant contributions. And apart from bringing John and his partner Carmen to Australia on a regular basis, we did that for many years. I've also brought out other trainers to Australia as well. So yeah, so we've trained with many of the early developers of NLP,
Mm-hmm.
and we've been doing it a long time. And I must say, John is still working. I believe John's in his 80s, and he's still teaching, which is fabulous.
That's amazing. And the nice thing is to see that you and your wife, you've been doing all of this together for decades. So, looking at your private life, what are some of the habits that bring happiness in your life that make you so successful?
Having a future orientation. So I think about the type of futures I want to have, and I apply myself to achieving those futures. So that I think having a future orientation is very useful. Um, I personally have an interest in health and fitness, so I enjoy weight training, and um, frankly, I do about an hour, 60 minutes to 70 minutes aerobic activity most days. Well, let's say 5 days a week. Um, um, so I like being very physically active. That brings a lot of pleasure, and I think it's just a very healthy thing for people to do as they get older. I think the older you get, the more powerful exercise is in terms of the effects that it has on your physiology. Um, and well, I love networking with people. Frankly,
You're
I,
so good with people, I gotta say. Like just meeting you from the start, it was a big welcome, an immediate connection. I can definitely see you're using the skills yourself that you are teaching.
well, thank you. Look, I've got a people orientation. I love working with people. I love people becoming successful. So the more successful, it's when our students, but also our clients, for one-on-one work, um, their successes, for me, I feel, great satisfaction in their successes. I just love the fact that we're assisting people to be more successful in their lives, and it's not just the usual way people think about success in terms of making money and so on. It is, you know, people developing a better relationships within themselves between their conscious minds and their unconscious minds. People developing better skills in terms of how they parent. People becoming better leaders in their workplaces. I love it when a lot of my former students, a lot of our former students have gone off and developed fantastic businesses. A couple of students who met on our program are now business partners. About 2 years ago, they listed their company on the Australian Stock Exchange. I'm really proud of them. I think they've done
Wow.
really well. But they met on one of our training programs. They both trained extensively with us, and one's a technical person, just an incredible software engineer, and
Yeah.
the other one takes the managing director role
Well,
and CEO role, and he's got phenomenal people skills
mhm.
that he find on our program, and I just love that. That's the stuff that produces a lot of pleasure and satisfaction for my partner and I
Yes.
as successes of our former students.
I've definitely met some very incredible individuals who are your students, very diverse, different nationalities, different backgrounds. I remember I met this one lady. She is, I think, like a therapist for snipers or so. And then there was an Italian person, like a lot of like great people that we coached each other and like practiced the skills. So I think we got a lot of motivation here to start joining your graduate certificate. And you are starting the new round of your grad certificates on end of January, January 23rd or
Right.
so, right? Do you want to mention another word on this?
Yeah, so I think it's the second week of January. The second weekend is our first practice and assessment weekend for people doing the blended learning format. That's a combination online and then coming in for weekends. The other format, the fully online format, that's for people who don't live in Sydney, so people who are interstate in Australia or overseas, and we have some overseas students, of course. Um, but in terms of the blended learning format, that the next program, the first unit, that's going to be, I think, second weekend in January. What I love about Sydney, and Australia, is we have students who've got all sorts of backgrounds. Australia is very much a multicultural society now, which is just wonderful. So a lot of people will have English as their second language, or a lot of people are absolutely fluent, bilingual, at least two languages. Some people have more, of course. And so we have this wonderful diversity. The typical person who trains with us is really middle class. They're usually over 35 or older. Some of them are looking for a career change. Some just want to be more effective at what they do. We have a lot of people who are entrepreneurs. We do get some professionals. We get accountants who no longer want to be accountants, or lawyers who want to shift out of law and do something else. So we have quite a diversity of people. Now our program is postgraduate, so it's a postgraduate degree. So people need to have a bachelor's degree or an advanced diploma to get entry. But the great thing is, so we're working with people who already have some sort of academic success, and they're intelligent people, and they're learning NLP that they can from first principles, so they can apply it into multiple areas of their lives. So as far as I'm concerned, first and foremost, if you're learning NLP, you should be able to apply it to yourself. So you should have choices about, being able to change your own behavior, have choice about your emotional, psychological states, be able to change your own states. You want to be able to change any limiting belief, and you want to be able to apply those tools for yourself, by yourself, first and foremost. Then if you want to be applying it to coaching, then you have a foundation to doing that, because you're applying it to your own life. Secondly, rather than just applying it in one narrow area, such as coaching, which is a perfectly fine area to apply it, if you're going to apply it in coaching, well, surely you want to apply it to your parenting if you're a parent. Or, by the way, if you're a grandparent, apply it to how you relate to your grandchildren, right?
Exactly.
And, you want to apply it to your sport if you have a sport, in terms of improving your sports performance. If you're a manager or a leader, you need to be applying it in the workplace as well. So the idea is to apply to multiple areas of your life. And if you're learning from first principles, you can take the underlying principles that you're learning and apply them into multiple areas of life. And to me, that's where people demonstrate the most success, because it's not just in one little area. It's not a narrow focus.
I've definitely gotten a lot of new inspiration and motivation today. I mean, I'm also an NLP practitioner, right? To start applying it even more in my life. As you said, we actually have learned the tools. Many of us have taken tons of trainings, but we barely ever really apply it in every part of our life, and private and work life, and we all have different roles. So thanks for the motivation. Last question, because we have been speaking for a long time, and I would have loved to continue this longer. We spoke a lot about your successes, but sometimes we also learn a lot from our failures, right? So my last two questions now would be, if you can quickly answer them. Number one, what do you think was your biggest failure in life and work? It doesn't matter. And then secondly, what was the best advice you have ever received, or that you also want to share with us? And then we're going to close today's podcast.
Okay. So, well, I wouldn't say I don't know about biggest failure. The failure that crosses my mind when it comes to business was holding on to an employee who was not a good fit, who was not performing, and was not growing in the role despite coaching. And because of my bias in terms of, I've done a lot of coaching with a lot of people, and I've also done a lot of therapy with people as well. I was operating out of the view, well, anybody with enough coaching, can change particular patterns and adopt useful skills. And that was a powerful learning for me, that, well, no matter, sometimes a person, despite the coaching, they're going to hold on to some pattern that doesn't work for them. And so the big lesson was, if somebody's not performing, you do whatever you can to help them to improve their skills and improve their performance. And if then after you've done that, they're not showing evidence of improvement, it's better for them as well as for your business to to fire them. Frankly, that was a hard lesson. Because I like people, and firing somebody is for me was quite challenging.
Yeah, and some people are just not coachable, right? As you just mentioned. So yeah. Thank you so much.
So that was a failure. That it would have been better for that person if he had left 6 months earlier. I held on to it 6 months longer than I should have.
Thank you so much for taking the time, Chris, for the inspiration, motivation, and even actionable tools that you have given us now. What are your last words to our listeners? And of course, they can check out your trainings and also the links. We have it all provided.
Okay, I'm going to say pass on a piece of personal advice that was given to me by one of the co-originators of NLP, Dr. John Grinder. So John was out doing a program for us. We're driving somewhere. Well, I'm driving, and he heard me make a comment about, "Oh, yeah, that's easy," and he questioned me on it. I said, "Well, when you say easy, what's the other end?" I said, "Well, something's either difficult or easy." And he said, "Well, he says that's right." So they said, "Now, a more useful way of thinking, instead of ease and difficulty, think in terms of complexity and simplicity." It is a much more useful way of thinking about it, because he said anything complex can be made simple. And that idea has had a profound impact on my life, because faced with challenges or problems or very big projects that seem rather complex, then the art is we call it chunking. How do you break it down into manageable chunks? How do you make it into a series of simple steps to achieve? So anything complex can be made simple, and I think it's a profound idea.
I absolutely love it. Thank you so much, Chris. Happy weekend. And I hope to see you again in person very, very soon. And thank you for the amazing work you're doing.
Thank you.
And I look forward. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
And I look forward to seeing you. Yes.
Thank you. And you've also been working in China before, right?
Yes. Absolutely love Shanghai.
Happy to hear that. To all of our listeners, sharing is caring. If you love today's episode, send it to your friends, and see you for the next episode. Bye, Chris. Bye, guys.
Bye, Janine. Thank you.